Hello, welcome to my channel, Edible Thoughts Makes. My name is Stephanie and this is episode 149. I am coming to you from the beginning of October, year 2025. I can hardly believe we've flipped the calendar to October already. September just flew by. I think it was also a little misleading because we had some chilly days, but then it got really hot. And then finally, it is now cool again. This morning, it was 45 degrees Fahrenheit. I'll have the Celsius on the screen, and it just felt so nice. In today's episode, I have several knit projects to share with you. One of them is a finished project. I have a few other finished projects that I'm going to save until those patterns release because I did test knit those patterns. Today's focus will mostly be on works in progress. I think maybe one of them you've seen before. A couple of the others I'm just going to save until a future episode when more progress has been made on them. And then I do have 2 swatches to share with you for future projects. I guess one of them I have cast on already. Anyway, and then there are a couple of new things that I've not shared yet, so I'm really excited to talk to you about those. I have read a few books, so those will be in the Eats and Reads section. And then I do have a food for thought today to share with you, something that has really been going on in my mind and my heart, and I just really wanted to share those thoughts with you, so that will be at the very end. I do include closed captioning on all of my videos here on YouTube, so you can click on that CC button, and if I speak faster or slower than your preferences, YouTube also allows you to adjust the speed. I do include notes in the description box below the video. Sometimes you have to click on show more or a little arrow or something like that. And I include Ravelry project pages for all of my crocheted and knit items. Sewn items are not on Ravelry. And then I will link to makers, designers, their websites as much as possible because they usually have all their socials and other things linked from there. Before we start on the one finished project I have to share with you today, I'm going to just briefly mention what I am wearing. This is the Lakes cardigan by Ozetta. I did finish this project this year, and I have been so excited for it to get cool enough to put it on. I knit this in Purl Soho's Hedgerow, which is a woolen spun yarn, and it has these beautiful rainbow tweed bits in it that are very nicely integrated into the yarn so that they aren't sticking out to the point where I feel like I should pick them off. That is my one thing about tweed yarn. I don't like it when the tweed bits stick out of the yarn so that they come off on their own or I feel like I need to pick them off. So this one I feel like is very well integrated into the yarn, so they blend in with the stitches. And I held this hedgerow yarn with the Purl Soho mohair silk, and that's the tussock base, and that was a golden yellow color, and I love how they worked out together. Both of the yarns were provided by Purl Soho for this specific project. And then I purchased these beautiful buttons from the Yarnery. They are gold, and they are a sheep weather vane. Hopefully it's in focus so that you can see what it looks like, but there is a bit of a shine to it, so sometimes it can be hard to see with the glare. I do have 4 buttons on here, and I just love how this garment worked out. It is so lovely, and it is light and warm, and I did talk about it in a previous episode, so if you want more details, you can go there. It would be also good to mention that I include the links to different YouTube videos where I've talked about a project, either as a work in progress or as a finished project. So those are linked in the Ravelry project pages for each project. The only finished project I'm going to share with you today are a pair of socks. This is from the 2025 Cuff Club Volume 2 month of September. This Cuff Club is by Summer Lee Designs. So you pay one amount of money and then you get a chart or a pattern each month, and that will include a base sock pattern and then something interesting for like the cuff section. So this year she's doing more textured cuffs. So we're looking at cables or potentially lace. I believe August also included a color work chart along with a cabled chart. I don't love knitting cables, but in this small canvas, I am willing to go through the effort of doing cables. These were a little fussier than August cables, but they were fun anyway. I did change it up a little by knitting it sport weight. So I knit mine on US 2 or 2.75 millimeter needles for the cuff and the main fabric portion. But for the heels and for the toes, I switched to a US 1.5 or 2.5 millimeter needle for a denser fabric because I like a denser fabric in the areas that have more friction so that I can prevent getting holes in those areas. The yarn I used was Knit Picks Hawthorne in the colorway Kerns, and that is an 80/20 superwash wool nylon blend, and it comes in 357 yards for 100 grams, and so that's this tonal purple hued gray color, and I use that for the cuff and for the heel. And then for my main fabric, it's Nomadic Yarns, and that's the Twisty Sport Base, 80% superwash merino and 20% nylon. It comes in 328 yards for 100 grams, and that colorway is Succulent Garden. Ashley of Nomadic Yarns dyes beautiful colorways, and I believe their stripes are usually about 4 or 5 rounds. And I love how these colors work up together. You have 2 shades of green, 2 shades of purple, 2 shades of this peachy orange color, and then it continues. And these socks I knit to be identical, so the stripes are going in the same direction and they start on the same color. I used 16.44 grams of the contrast color and 56.16 grams of the main color, and I cast on 56 stitches. And again, using a bigger needle than what the pattern calls for. And the pattern also is written for a heel flap and gusset. And I just decided I wanted to use a shadow wrap short row heel. And that makes sure that the stripes don't get broken up and the width of the stripes don't change because the stitch count between the leg and the foot areas are all the same. Something to note that cables are less elastic in the finished fabric, and so the pattern does recommend going up a needle size for the cuff compared to the rest of the fabric. Now, because I went up to a US 2 and then I followed the smallest size in the pattern, I didn't change my needle size between the cable part and the main fabric, and they still fit over my feet just fine. However, if you feel like your cables are knit really tight, then just be aware that you might have to go up even another needle size or half a needle size to make sure that that gauge and tension works out for you for a fabric that still goes over your foot. So these are my September 2025 Cuff Club Volume 2 socks. We are moving on to the works in progress section. I'm going to start with a project that you have seen before. I think it has been maybe 3 or 4 weeks since I last shared it with you. And I am so excited with how it is working up. So before I start with that, I just wanted to share that all of the project bags you're going to see in this episode today, I have made. I don't follow a tutorial or any specific pattern. There are tons out there. So if there is something that you want to make for yourself, I would say search for drawstring project bag or lined project bag or boxed bottom project bag, tote bag. It doesn't even have to be specifically a project bag. So that word doesn't really have to be in your search specifically. So if you just search for like a drawstring bag or a lined tote bag, there will be tons of tutorials and patterns out there. I just make whatever works for me. A lot of times my limiting reagent or my limiting variable is maybe the size of the fabric, and then I just get creative with that. Or maybe there are just some colors that are really speaking to me, and so I'll just pull all those together and make what I want. I have been sewing since I was a little girl. I learned from my mom, and I just love the creativity that comes with putting different fabric patterns together and creating something that's functional art. In this very autumnal project bag here, I have my Porty cardigan. This is a pattern by Gudrun Johnston, and it is a steeked cardigan. So there's color work in the top section, and then there are steek stitches down the center, and those will be cut later to knit a button band. It is knit top down, and I discussed last time that I was going to be making some changes. One of the modifications I'm making is in the gauge. I think my gauge is actually kind of close, but I think I'm like a stitch off. The color work stitch gauge is 27 stitches and the row gauge is 32 rows. And I think I'm close, but maybe not quite. I'm just going to make adjustments as I go. The needle size is called for a US 3 and a US 4, which is respectively a 3.25 millimeter and a 3.5 millimeter. But what I am doing is I'm going to use a US 4 for the main fabric and the color work. My color work tends to be on the looser side, so I don't always go up a needle size for color work. And then my ribbing will be in a US 2. The yarn I'm using is Pearl Soho Goodwool. I did purchase all of this yarn myself. I used way more colors than are called for in the pattern because that's what I wanted to do. And this yarn I just love working with. It's 100% Andean Highland wool. It comes in 383 yards for 100 grams. There are tons of different colors. It is a heathered yarn. It is very lightweight. You can knit it from like a fingering to like DK weight depending on your item, the fabric, the drape, what you are looking for. I find the price really budget friendly for the yardage and for the quality of the yarn, and so I've collected lots of different colors over the years, which is perfect for knitting a color work garment. Are you ready to see what I've got? Here we go. Here is my Porty cardigan. So I have split the body and the sleeves. So the sleeves are held on silicone tubing, and then the live stitches are on needles right now for the bottom. So I just need to knit this body section and then the sleeves. And I think I am going to do a ribbed button band. In the pattern, it has an I-cord button band and there's only buttons in the top section, but I think I'm gonna do the whole thing ribbed in the front and do buttonholes all the way down. And so that's my plan for now, but I don't really have to decide that right now. So we'll see what I decide later. My main color here is a beautiful robin's egg blue. It is called Desert Blue. And then I have a ton of different colors incorporated into the color work section. This top color is Teal Twilight. It's a heathered blue. And then this red-orange color is Barn Door. A light peachy pink color is Pink Salt. The dark green is Dark Spruce. The lighter green is Olive Oil. The neutral brown color is Walking Stick. I think that's a little bit farther down here. And the purpley color is Fresh Loganberry. And I believe that's all the colors. So I didn't follow the chart exactly for color placement. I just put it in as I felt like it, and I wrote out my color work chart and colored it in as I went. That way I could keep track of where my increases were supposed to be and where my color placement was, and so I didn't get too confused looking at the designer's chart and their like light and dark sequence as it went. So the tricky part with this is the fit won't be exactly known until I cut the steek open and put in that button band, at which point it's too late to really rip it out and redo anything. So as I go, I'm just trusting my gut and the pattern and leaning on the experience that I've had knitting other garments for myself and hoping that it turns out. But so far, I think it's pretty good. So this is how my cardigan is going. The color work section on this top portion is complete and I am on the body now. And so I'm just going to knit probably to full length, I think, because I am going to follow the A-line shaping in the pattern to make sure I have a little bit of positive ease at my hips. I am going to knit it to past the top of my hips, and I'm just really excited with how this is turning out. The next project I'm going to share with you are a pair of socks. I actually cast these on in February. I'm going to share them with you today, and maybe if you watched an episode back in February, you will recognize them. These are a pair of socks that I am knitting on US 1.5 needles, and they're based off of the Socksploration Shadow Wrap heel pattern by my friend Denise of Earth Tones Girl, and I've cast on 56 stitches, and I knit a knit to purl to cuff, and then at each color change, which isn't always at the beginning of round, so that doesn't matter to me. It's just when the color starts changing, I will do a knit round without any purls until I get back to that first knit stitch, and then I will continue following it in pattern. So I decided to do a full color repetition for this nice deep cuff, and then just go into stockinette for the leg, and then I did a shadow wrap short row heel in Patent Croy Muslin colorway, which is just like an off-white cream color. and then continuing on the foot in stockinette. These are 9-inch Chaogu circular needles, which I enjoy using. For some people, the 9-inch circulars make their hands really hurt or cramp up. I think a lot of it has to do with how we hold our needles and how we tension our yarn. And I think if you are going to use 9-inch circulars, one tip might be to lighten up on the grip of the needles. Just holding them a little bit looser might help. But also for some people, I know that they use their pinky to anchor themselves on to a longer needle, like if they're doing magic loop. And of course, with a really small needle, there's really nowhere to anchor that pinky. If you don't feel like changing up how you hold your needles, that's totally fine. Maybe 9-inch circulars just aren't for you. But if you are interested or curious and wanting to try something a little bit different, those are just a few little tips that might help adjust your hands to using these small circular needles. I like how little real estate they take up in my purse or a project bag. And so something like this is really easy for me to take anywhere. And then I also feel like I'm not pulling a needle out all the way on accident if I'm using double pointed needles, or even with magic loop, sometimes that loop around to like pull the needle back through. Sometimes if I'm not paying attention, I can pull something all the way through. Or if I'm in some tight space and I don't want to be like pulling a needle out into whoever is next to me, I just feel like these small circulars just take up a lot less real estate in my purse and just in like the space that I might be knitting in. So these are just on the foot now. I like to knit mine in tandem, so on 2 separate needles. And I prefer it that way because I've tried it where I'm knitting them on the same needle and it just felt really lopsided to me. I did not like that. And then because they are on their own needles, if I just want to take one sock with me, I can do that and it takes up a lot less space. So here are my socks. They are both past the heel and on the foot section. I also like having these socks handy when we are playing board games as a family. Sometimes people's turns take a little longer and I can just sit there and knit but still be paying attention, and I can pick it up and put it down whenever and not worry about having to count or miss my turn or be annoying and have people say, hey, it's your turn. So I feel like these kind of socks work really well for that. In all of my talk about these socks, I forgot to mention what the main yarn is. This is by Mud Punch. It is their 80/20 superwash merino nylon base. It is 385 yards for 110 grams. And I really love this plush sock yarn. I feel like it knits up a little bit thicker, which is how I like my socks. And that's also why I'm using US 1.5 or 2.5 millimeter needles. And I don't feel like the fabric comes out too loose or too dense. I feel like that is a happy spot for me with these socks using that needle size. This colorway is called Delicate Clouds, and I love the colors. We've got this corally peach and a light peachy pink, 2 shades of light gray, this light mint with a coordinating teal color, and then it repeats. The next project I have to share with you is from the 2025 October Sock Squad sock set from the Farmer's Daughter Fibers. And this is an annual sock club or yarn club. Every month you get a new set with 100 grams and then a 20 grams of fingering weight yarn. It rotates through 3 different bases, and the colorways are all inspired by the artwork from Land and She, which are in a project notebook journal. For October, the colorway is Focused. I will have a picture of it here on the screen. And the base is Elkhorn Sock, which is 80% super wash Punta Arenas merino and 20% nylon. 437 yards for 100 grams. And I am knitting the classic ribbed hat, which is a free pattern by Jake Canton for Pearl Soho. I have probably knit a dozen of these hats. I like it for on the go. I find it great for holding fingering weight yarns double in addition to using DK weight. It is written for a DK weight gauge using US 3.25 millimeter needles. And I caked my yarn up into 2 cakes so that I could pull from the outside of each one, and I just love this colorway. It is a cream base with multicolored speckles throughout, and it is just so beautiful and reminds me of the colors of early autumn. We've got some light bluey green, some gold, some purple, some red, and it is a pretty subtle contrast with the cream base, but they still pop just as beautifully, and I love how it is knitting up. I am holding the yarn double, knitting this 1x1 ribbed hat. And here is where we are. I have it on 16-inch circulars. My beginning of round marker is a dark green leaf polymer clay marker by Reshma of Hello Lavender. It's probably going to be a little tricky to see here on the screen. And then I have a Progress Keeper also by Reshma of Hello Lavender that has flowers on it and text that says, "I am enough." I have cast on for the adult medium size, and I will knit to past the adult large size, and I find that works really well for me because I like a nice deep brim. I also find that it is more adjustable if it is going to be a gift knit, that it doesn't have to be just right. Someone can always have the brim shorter or longer and have the hat worn more fitted or more slouchy. I really recommend this hat pattern for anybody that doesn't mind knitting a 1x1 rib, or if you do mind, maybe this will help you practice and get some muscle memory in and even out your knits and purls. Either way, I really like a ribbed hat because I find the fit to be more comfortable. It can be more snug. If it stretches out a little, usually there's some elasticity where it will bring it back in. And so as far as fit goes, I just find it way more forgiving than a hat that might just be plain stockinette. Also, for any yarn that is more variegated or has heavy speckling, I find that ribbing breaks it up a little bit more, so there isn't the chance of it pooling in one area as much as if it were a stockinette fabric. The next thing I'm going to share with you are two swatches. Both of the swatches are knit with the same yarn. This is Patton's Worsted. It is a 100% non-superwash wool that can be purchased at Michael's, which is an arts and crafts store based in the United States. This yarn does not come in a lot of different colors. Hello, future editing Stephanie here to say that the color selection isn't great when it's purchased from Michael's, but there are other places that you can purchase the Patton's Classic Worsted Wool yarn, and they have way more color selections. Just a brief check on Google. Yarnspirations has a good color selection, and Wool & Company also has a good color selection. But at Michael's, I believe there's usually only like maybe 5 different colors, and then in stock there might just even be like 2 colors. So just wanted to clarify in there are other places to purchase this yarn, and there are other color options. It is at a great price point, especially for garments and anything smaller, of course. So it comes in 100 grams and 194 yards. So it is an Aran weight, worsted weight yarn, and the retail price is $6.99 USD per 100 grams. I was able to purchase it with a 30% off coupon, and that comes out to be $4.89. So here is one of my swatches. This is knit on a US 7 or a 4.5 millimeter needle. And I knit this one probably an inch smaller than it should have been, but I still get an idea of what my gauge is supposed to be. I like the fabric, and this did get cast on in a different colorway for the project that I'm going to show you next. I do have a video here on YouTube that talks about what information I seek to get out of my swatches and how I prefer to do my fabric swatches. And I will link to those, so if you're interested, you can check those out. This is the See My Vest Worsted pattern by Emily Boldwan of Maker Maker. It is a free pattern. The pattern comes in multiple sizes, and I am knitting the extra small size for a child, so there will be some positive ease for them to grow into it, but I think it should fit okay. The colorway I'm using for this is Heath Heather. It is a grayish brown color that I feel like is very neutral, and I may or may not end up embroidering a little bit on the vest just to make it a little more interesting looking, but I will cross that road when I get there. But I think this is going to knit up really nicely, and as a neutral, I feel like it'll pair with a lot of different things and maybe be less likely that the child will like grow out of that color, so we'll see. I've only just cast on, and I am using US 7s. This vest is knit top down. It's a seamless construction. You cast on from the upper back, and then you work flat down to the underarm, put those stitches on hold, and then pick up separate stitches for the front shoulders to then shape the neckline. And then you knit down the front to match the back, join in the round, and then you work in the body. Hopefully I'll have a picture here on the screen from the designer so you can see what that looks like. There's not a ton to gather from my start here. I have just cast on and I will just work on it when I feel like it, but I do like how the fabric is looking and I do like how this yarn feels. The next swatch I'm going to share with you is a project I have not cast on yet, but I do have the yarn set to go, and unfortunately I didn't bring the yarn with me here in my pile, but you'll see it eventually when I cast on. So this is for the Coffee Date by Samantha Guerin, and this is not the color I'm going to knit mine in, but it is the color that I decided to swatch in. This is the Patons Worsted, 100% non-superwash wool, 194 yards for 100 grams. This gauge swatch I knit on a US 6 or 4mm needle, and it's actually too small compared to the gauge for the pattern. For the Coffee Date pattern, it's recommended to use a lace plus a sport, and the gauge is 19 stitches by 30 rows in this ribbed texture pattern. I did use the recommended needles, but my gauge is too tight, and so what I'm going to do is potentially go up a needle size, and then I'm going to add a fuzzy mohair to this yarn and see how that goes. If that ends up too big, then I'll go back down to the called for needle size, but still add the mohair and see how that goes. Because I don't want my fabric to be too airy or have too much gapiness to it, because I do like the fabric density that I'm getting in this swatch. However, I don't want my garment to come out too small, and going up a size in the pattern for a gauge that's too small can sometimes work, but not always, because of just how a pattern may be graded. There's just a lot of other moving parts to think about. So I may do that, I may do something else. I'm not entirely sure yet, but I did want to share with you my swatch. I do love how this nice round fluffy yarn is knitting up in this pattern. I feel like there is great stitch definition. I'm just going to do a different color for it. I'm going with a cream natural color, and then if I do add mohair to it, I have like a very light pink that I think is going to look really nice with it. So that is a future cast on. It may not be in October, it may be in November, but I did want to share with you how this swatch looks and some of my thought processes and where I am going with this. I may or may not knit the entire thing. Hopefully the picture will be here on the screen. I may knit it as just a slip over and not do the sleeves. I feel like I would get a lot of wear out of that, and I really do look forward to casting on. It just might have to be in November. The last project I have to share with you is a test knit for Tori Yu. This is the Avenue pullover. I did test the Avenue vest last year, and I have purchased the Avenue tee pattern, and now there is an Avenue pullover pattern that I am testing. This is a DK weight pattern. It comes in a crew neck and a V-neck, and I am pretty excited about this. I think it's going to be so wearable. It has a unique construction and thoughtful details like Tori is known for in her patterns, and I'm going to share with you the very beginning of my sweater and the yarns that I am using. I have purchased both of my yarns, and this is the Pearl Soho Good Wool. I had mentioned earlier, I really love this yarn. It is so fluffy and soft. This colorway is Driftwood Gray. It has a very soft, subtle heathering to it. This is undyed yarn. It is a very warm gray. And I am pairing it with Knitting for Olives Soft Silk Mohair in Rose Clay. I feel like it will just add a little bit of dimension to it, and I really love this very neutral, soft pink color. I purchased the mohair from Wool and Company. The fiber content of the mohair actually surprised me because I thought Knitting for Olive Soft Silk Mohair was a 70% mohair, 30% silk, but this one, the label says it's 68% mohair and then 28% silk and 4% wool. So I have just recently cast this on, and so far this is what I have. It is knit top down, so I am in the shaping section of the shoulders and the neck. Here we are. Here's a little close-up of this shoulder neck detail. I love how tidy it looks. The yarn is knitting up beautifully and I am on gauge. I feel like this neutral is going to be so nice to dress up or dress down. I can wear it with jeans, but also with nice slacks. And I think it's just going to look and feel so luxurious and so nice. I am knitting the V-neck version, and I think it's going to look really good. I am excited for this. I feel like I have a lot of very bold colored pieces in my rotations and I love those, but I also love having a couple of neutral pieces that can be also very wearable and fun to pair with other potentially very bright colors. We are on to the eats and reads section. There are a couple of bakes that I want to share with you from the last several weeks that we have really enjoyed in our household. There will be photos here on the screen so you can see what they look like. One of them is a pumpkin donut bundt cake. So good. Now, disclaimer here, mine didn't actually have any canned pumpkin or pumpkin puree in it because as I was making it, I realized that I didn't actually have any pumpkin puree, even though I thought I did. And so there are pumpkin pie spices in it, but instead of the pumpkin, I added grated carrots. And that actually worked out just fine. It was still delicious. It still actually tasted like a donut, and the pumpkin pie spices just kind of made it. If you didn't look too carefully, you probably actually wouldn't know that there were carrots in it. Only reason you knew is because you see little like speckles of orange that look like carrot and not like a pumpkin. But overall, the essence of what the recipe was supposed to be still came out to fruition and it was delicious. I have also recently made some sourdough discard English muffins. They were so easy, so quick, and really delicious. Again, there will be a photo here on the screen. We have been enjoying them just toasted with butter, so good, and also with our homemade plum jam that I've talked about in previous episodes. I should mention that if there are links to any recipes that I can include, I will have them in the description box. Sometimes if things are from my cookbook, I won't have a link to direct you to, but I'll mention the cookbook. And if I've made so many modifications that it's not even close to what the original one was, I will still link to it if I can find it, but just make a note that whatever I made is just like inspired by that original recipe. Another thing I've made recently was from sourdough that did not work out, so it was not very airy. It was actually more dense than it should have been, but I turned them into these mustard garlic croutons and they were so good and made the house smell amazing. And then I took those and made them into an egg frittata, like a savory bread pudding with milk and eggs and cheese and corn, and that was so good. It reheats great and packs into a lunch to heat up later really, really well. Now we're going to move on to 3 books that I recently read that I would like to share with you. I will put a picture of the book cover here on the screen so you have a visual aid for that. And like I've mentioned in previous videos, I don't really go over like a book summary of any sorts because I'm always worried about giving away spoilers and just kind of getting carried away talking too much about a book summary. Also, book summaries can be found anywhere online or if you read the dust cover of a book. So instead, what you get from me is my overall experience from reading that book, maybe some commentary on the writer's style and how that aligned with my mood when I was reading the book. The first book I'm going to mention is one that I actually mentioned a couple of weeks ago. That's A Forgery of Fate by Elizabeth Lim. I did go over a lot of details last time, even though I said I wasn't going to do that. And so if you want a little more deep dive into like the background of that book and the maps and all that, I would just refer you to that episode and I'll link to it somewhere here on the screen. A Forgery of Fate was published June 2025, 470 pages. It's a standalone, but it's within the world that Elizabeth Lim has built and written a ton of other books in. This is young adult fantasy, fiction, romance, very low spice levels. It's adventurous, emotional, beautiful settings. It is funny. I think one of the reviews, or what do you call them? not a tagline. I can't think of what the word is, but one way that it's been categorized maybe is to think of The Beauty and the Beast meets Six of Crows. And I can see that for sure, but maybe that wouldn't be the first thing that came to mind when I read it. It's medium paced, and I think it has a lovable, diverse cast of characters. If you like art, specifically painting and food, then maybe this would be a book you might want to check out. That's A Forgery of Fate by Elizabeth Lim. The next book I want to share with you is one recommended to me by a friend on Instagram. This is Water Moon by Samantha Soto Yambao. This was published January 2025, 374 pages. It's a standalone adult fantasy fiction. You've got magic realism, mystery, romance. It's ethereal. It's a little bit of a dark fairy tale. And I feel like for those who are a fan of Miyazaki, then you might get that feeling of like a Studio Ghibli-esque type of world, and I just loved that. I will say the one thing I didn't love was like the insta-love part of the story. Like I expected it to happen anyway, but I would have liked a little more chemistry, a little more build-up, and yeah, so that part just didn't really work for me, but it didn't ruin the story at all. I still enjoyed the story very, very much. I loved the atmosphere. I loved the little bits of like life lesson things in there. And I still have the library book with me. I wanted to share before I had to give it back. And I tabbed several things in here. One thing to note that if you like to read based on mood and seasons, this book does start in like early autumn, late summerish. So I feel like it's kind of the perfect time to dive into a book that's seasonally appropriate for this time. I'm going to read a little section for you. I don't think it's going to really give anything away because you don't really know the context of it, but I think it'll still be really beautiful. You are a wise man, Ono-san. Aritomo shook his head. Not wiser than any of those who wait here. We have been blessed with the time to think. It has allowed us to realize that life is about finding joy in the space between where you came from and where you are going. I may never get to where I want to go, but I can look back on my life and say that I did not waste a second of it being bitter that I was not someplace else. Happiness does not exist in a place. It lives in every breath we take. You need to choose to take it in over and over again. I just loved that. There were so many little snippets in this book that I was like, okay, I have to write that down. I'm going to read one more little section. Everyone I have ever encountered, no matter how brief, has either taken something or left something behind. Rude people can rip the smile from your face. Kind ones can give it back. I have learned that there is nothing to be gained from stealing other people's happiness. No matter how much you have stolen, it is not something that you can ever use for yourself. So good. So good. So that is Water Moon. The third book I'd like to share with you today is A Witch's Guide to Magical Innkeeping. I adored this story. We're talking low stakes. We're talking magic. We're talking love and found family. And it just was the perfect hot cup of tea that I needed when I was just feeling so frazzled. Published July 2025, 336 pages. It is a standalone adult contemporary fiction, cozy fantasy romance. And instead of that one-dimensional grumpy versus sunshine trope, I feel like we get a more complex grumpy to grumpy maybe trope. Although I feel like that's not really a trope. So not a trope, but we get this like more complex grumpy to grumpy kind of situation here, and I just loved it. I loved all the characters, and I really like how they interacted with each other. They were all so different, and so when somebody was talking, you knew who was talking. It wasn't like I had a second guess and think, wait, how did we switch point of views here? Or who are we talking about here? They were all fleshed out in a way that was just so much fun to get to know, and the ride was enjoyable. It wasn't a super, super long book, and being a standalone, when it was done, it was finished, there was closure, and I kind of just wanted to open it back up and start from the beginning again. It was really good and just what I needed. So if you're looking for something that's low stakes, quirky, whimsical, and has all the things that I mentioned earlier, maybe check out A Witch's Guide to Magical Innkeeping. We are down to food for thought. I just have one little thing to share with you today that has just been on my mind and in my heart. I wanted, first off, to thank you for showing up for me in this creative space. It takes a lot of energy and effort to show up, and I'm not just talking about here on YouTube, because yes, that does take a lot of energy to show up here and have my thoughts in order, my projects in order, things that I want to talk about, notes written out, and then of course there's all the behind the scenes afterwards with the editing and the uploading and hoping technology works right, hoping all the things are working. There is a lot that goes on to putting together an episode to put out onto the internet. And then we're holding our breaths, hoping that people are kind and receptive to what we have to share, what we bring to the world, how we're taking up space. And with that, I just wanted to say thank you for helping me feel valued and heard and appreciated in this space. And I hope that we can bring that to more people. And I feel like so much is lost these days in the value of being appreciated, and it can be somebody that you know really, really well, but it could also be somebody that you don't have a personal relationship with, but yet you might see every day as a barista in a coffee shop, or maybe a cashier at the grocery store, or maybe your child's bus driver or teacher. There are just so many ways that we are very, very interconnected, and yet we can still feel so disconnected. And I feel like there are so many ways that we can reach out and just thank somebody for showing up. Thank somebody for being who they are and reminding them that they matter and that we all play roles in this big web of humanity and that we do need one another. And to feel valued and appreciated can go such a long way. And I just really, really hope that we can send out more of that kind of energy. I am not here to tell you what to do, how to think, or any of that. I feel like this is more of something that I'm just putting out into the universe. And if it resonates with you, maybe you will continue that ripple effect and do something to help others feel appreciated and valued, and thanking them for showing up in the space that they show up in the space that they take up, in how they continue to make an impact on others. I think that is everything that I wanted to share with you today. Again, thank you so much for being in this creative space with me today. Cheers to being creative. I hope you are doing well, taking good care of yourselves, your loved ones, and your neighbors, and I will talk to you next time. Bye.